Welcome back to the Power 2 here on College Football Addiction. TJ Pittinger, Cole Thompson, and back with us after a 1-week hiatus, Tom Hannafin. How you boys doing?
Good. Great to be back, but I feel better than Cole does.
Yeah, I feel like crap. I don't know what I ate last night. I don't know what I did last night. But somehow I woke up this morning and realized I released my way too early top 25 rankings, and Penn State is sitting at number 1. So God bless my heart. I'm an idiot. I know I'm stupid. Don't worry. I've already accepted the comment section is going to be cascading with overall thoughts on how I should never speak about the sport again. So I'm excited.
3 of your top 5 are Big Ten. 4 of your top 5 are not the SEC. It's awesome.
It's very
for a channel called SEC Unfiltered. Like, we can mention that. Like, that's the best part of it to me.
It feels so unnatural, but I kept going back here. Okay, Tom, here's the worst part. Penn State came in at number 1 in my rankings by a significant margin. The one thing holding them back was Drew Aller. And when I have to now say Drew Aller is the reason why I'm having a conversation to be ahead of you, that should answer every question on why the hell you are number 1 and why there is no excuse for James Franklin in 2025. There should be no excuse for James Franklin.
Oh, I'm with you. You could have pointed at the wide receivers, the question marks in terms of depth at linebacker, defensive tackle, defensive end opposite to Dennis Sutton. But you know what? I appreciate it. I think not the most returning production from last year, but pretty darn close to the most. And like outside of Cade Klubnik, who's a returning regular starter from last year that you trust more than Drew Aller?
Garrett Nussmeier with a run game.
Yeah, you have a love affair with Nussmeier. I always forget about that.
Yeah. With a run game. That's the thing, though. If he doesn't have a run game, yeah, I mean,
dude, that first 3 big games,
Drew Aller to be mid. That's the problem. I expect the run game to be better this year than it was last season with Katron and Nick back.
Dude, if he goes to the other Death Valley, if he goes to Clemson, South Carolina, has a 3-pick game to start the year out, Tom is going to take the longest victory lap that you've ever seen on this show. We may have to break into the, immediate. It may have to be an instant reaction at that point. So,
oh yeah.
Admittedly, though, if he goes up there and throws for 4 touchdowns in Death Valley and wins, Cole may do the same thing.
Just straight double bird in it for like. I'm just literally just live stream it, double bird.
Just 30 minutes of silence.
Boom, here we go. Let's go.
Don't call Steve Austin that thing. Clap a couple beers, double bird.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into some stuff this week. The drama around North Carolina. I don't know who wants to take this first, but we can all kind of go back and forth. Let's talk about a couple of things. One, just the drama. Do you think UNC is getting fed up with this? 2, I mean, I would like to talk about North Carolina a little bit as a team. Like, we're not doing a deep dive team thing, but like, how much of a distraction is this for them as a program? As a football team. Just all thoughts on North Carolina. I will literally volley this up, and whoever wants to take it can go.
I'll go first on this one because it's so bizarre, and there's a lot of layers to it. And that I do want to kind of draw a minor parallel to when Colorado began its relationship with Deion Sanders, is that they knew the size and the scale of which Deion Sanders' personality, that wake that it casts. Like, they understood kind of what they were inheriting. They knew they were getting Travis Hunter. They knew they were getting Shedeur Sanders. So they were like, okay, we're inheriting personnel on top of a huge personality and a coach who's going to draw eyeballs. So you kind of understood what the vibe was going to be. I don't think UNC really comprehended the Jordan Hudson element of this entire situation. I think on paper, they were like, wow, we're getting Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest NFL coach of all time, to come to UNC and help a program that's, competitive in the ACC, but like middle of the road and could use a bump. So it's gotten so weird to the point that the nepotism element with Steve Belichick is such a underlying story to this. Like, nobody's even paying attention to Steve Belichick and all the weird things he's doing with his tongue on the sideline. No one's paying attention to the fact that it is 2-way high-speed traffic in the transfer portal in and out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I believe it's 18 out, 16 in. Just as of last night, Amari Campbell is now a Penn State Nittany Lion. A lot of people talking about Bo Atkinson going off to Ohio State, but they've also added a lot of pieces in the portal. So I think there was this confusion at first of like, does Bill Belichick know how to connect with young people enough to recruit guys? And like you saw him out on the recruiting trail, and now they're diving into the transfer portal. And Lombardi is the GM of the program, and he's speaking for Belichick publicly. But then this whole CBS story goes out there, and it just gets weirder and weirder with Jordan Hudson. I think the element of this is that once the season gets underway, I don't expect UNC to be contending for an ACC championship. So I think to a degree, this will quiet down. It's just, you guys both know this, once the season's underway and the shit starts hitting the proverbial fan, that's when more Jordan Hudson stories are going to come out. And that's the lightning rod with this. And it's similar but different with Colorado in that you got a lot of Dion stories, like, oh, I'm bringing my Louis with me, and like all the stuff he's pulling with, the athletes telling them to go into the portal, that sort of stuff. It's so drastically different, and it's weird because of the relationship with Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson. Like, that's what's making it weird. If she wasn't in the picture, we would just be looking at this as a football story, but it's not a football story anymore. And I think that's the thing that was so different with Dion, is that Dion was always about football. Yes, it's about the hype, the glitz, the glam, but it's to draw you into the football. Now, no one's really paying attention to UNC football. They're paying attention to Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson.
You knew what you signed up for. You knew what you signed up for. You did.
Did they? Did they?
But Bubba Cunningham kind of made clear that he wasn't going in this direction, which is why he's being rumored to be the front runner for the job at Michigan State. He was thrown to the wayside when this hire was made. There were conversations that I had with people in Chapel Hill, just around the program, that said, if Bubba Cunningham had it his way, he would have gone with a more stable hire with a coach in college football who is not only younger, but also somebody who can connect with players, somebody that has a background in NIL, somebody that has a background in recruiting, somebody that knows the transfer portal and what to say to players that absolutely want to be a part of a program. And Bill Belichick was a guy that was a hot name that wanted to get back in coaching in a schedule to where you think about ratings playing a major role, whether or not we want to admit it, they do. You look at what is the pathway for North Carolina this upcoming fall. Game against Clemson, game against TCU, a bunch of other winnable contests. You go 11-1 in that stretch or 10-2 in that stretch, go to Charlotte, and you win the ACC, or you're 11-1 and lose in the ACC championship. They're not going to keep Bill Belichick out of the playoff with that record. So they figured, let's go ahead and bring in a guy that we know is all about winning. And unfortunately, there was other things that led into this. Like, number one, he was going to bring in a staff that probably didn't connect extremely well with players. What do we know about all the coaches on his staff? A lot of them came from the NFL. The NFL and college football, it's a completely different game. That's something that is going to be a major factor when it comes to recruiting and NIL services and what to tell a player on what they need to hear so you keep them in bounds and in Chapel Hill for the long term. Then the Jordan Hudson situation. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be the weird guy. I don't really care. You were born in 2001. What the hell do you mean that is a conversation on how did you two meet? You don't run in the same circles. You don't have the same type of dialect. You don't have the same type of hobbies. You don't have the same type of background. Your plans on Saturday night are completely different than his plans on Saturday night. And then it leads to an entire PR fiasco to where now you're having to reach for outside help just to be able to stabilize the program. Winning solves everything. And the good news is for a program like North Carolina, they can win right away. They have the quarterback. I love what Gio Lopez is as a player. I think that he is going to be a phenomenal playmaker for this offensive personnel. They have an easy schedule. TCU week 1, mid-October you play Clemson. The rest of it, it should feel like if you are as good as a coach as you think you are, and we all know how good of a coach Bill Belichick is, you should be in every single game, if not winning every single game. And that eventually will kind of quiet the critics and say, hey, we made the right hire because we got somebody that knows how to win, something that we have been preaching about this program taking us to the next level for a long term. But you knew what you were getting into in terms of what Bill Belichick was. You did, because it's not a normal coach. John Summerall is a normal coach. Getting a guy like Mark Stoops is a normal coach. Getting somebody, even I would say like Kalen DeBoer for that matter, for the most part, is a normal coach. Bill Belichick is a 6-time Super Bowl head coach winning champion and one of the greatest coaches in the NFL of all time. He's going to come with propaganda. He's going to come with a posse. It's a little different than the way that Dion got there, but it also is kind of the same pathway. And simply put, it's a name that is going to draw in eyeballs.
So here's my question to you guys. And did UNC understand how involved Jordan Hudson is in Bill Belichick's life and business when they hired him?
Did Bill Belichick know Jordan Hudson was involved in his life as much as this is possible? That's a better question, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, to answer Tom's, I would say no.
No,
certainly not. You guys brought up Bubba
That's
Cunningham.
the wrench.
Did you have a follow-up there, Tom?
No, I was saying that's the wrench in all this is understanding what Jordan Hudson is now that this whole project is underway.
And you guys brought up Bubba Cunningham, which is interesting to me in covering a lot of the realignment stuff where UNC, their board of trustees members and actually former ones. I don't think anybody on the actual, well, no, their commissioners said some stuff, but where, there's been a lot from what I've been told by people kind of in the room and that would know, there's been a good amount of dissension at UNC on what to do with this whole ACC thing. Bubba is a diehard ACC loyalist. And there's been some dissension on, should we go? Should we stay? He's a little more loyal. The board of trustees wants to go. Obviously, you've got the whole political thing. We don't have to get into the whole realignment kind of timeline at this point. But I do expect him to be gone, whether it's Michigan State, which was mentioned, just because there was dissension on Belichick. There was dissension on the realignment stuff. I think he's overall been pretty good for them. But I feel like he's kind of a rudderless ship, like he's in charge, but not really in charge. It feels like he's kind of being told what to do.
In charge. He's told you're going to the wayside, sit on the bench and shut up and have the title. That's what you are at this point.
But though I think he was probably wrong, I think what's best for UNC is to get out of the ACC. He might've been right about this Belichick thing. I guess time will tell. Maybe he's batting 500 on this.
Let me guys ask you, if you were UNC looking back, also knowing that Bill Belichick has never really spent time in college football, and this could be a ploy to get to the NFL, and long-term you want to be a player in the conference, whether it be the SEC or the ACC, do you regret this hire if he leaves a year from now and you're stuck with Steve Belichick as your coach and he is not his father and he ends up having a 4-8 record rather than taking a John Summerall? Or would you rather John Summerall go 7-5 this year but build a foundation that's sustainable for the long haul?
Let me ask you this. Now that you have the Jordan Hudson element of it all, how many NFL franchises want that circus?
So to answer both of them, let's be UNC. I mean, it very much comes down to how they perform this year, right? That's what.
Yeah, and to the points that Cole said, their schedule's pretty favorable, so I could see them finishing 9-3 regular season, and that they could have a nice little year. Do you like Bill Belichick as the head of your NFL franchise now more than you did 6 months ago?
I didn't like him 6 months ago. I don't like him now.
I think without the Jordan. Go ahead, TJ. Sorry.
To go back to Cole's point, did he? I mean, I'm certainly not as in tune with the NFL, but did he have to go this college route? Would no NFL franchise hire him?
No NFL franchise would have him this year.
Certainly, some idiot franchise would have hired him. If not this year, then next.
Well, yeah, because look at what happened when it came to Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was told, "Oh, you're no longer a fit for the NFL. Your ways are way too sporadic, and we got to make change in Seattle." And a year later, Tom Brady says, "Hey, I'm running the show out in Las Vegas. I want a leader in the locker room. I'm going to go get Pete Carroll." It would have happened, but if you're so bored with coaching and your entire livelihood is based around coaching football, then this was the only way I think Bill Belichick was going to get back in the game in 2025.
The thing that's interesting about this, and I talk with Justin King about this a lot on my other podcast, State, a Penn State football show, is that he's the NFL is about 32 individual billionaires. Now, Bill Belichick is a commodity in the NFL, but it's hey, do you want to pay that price tag? Does he want to rebuild? Are you trying to win now? All those questions were viable a handful of months ago. Now it's the question of, are you prepared to entertain this circus? Because it's the PR element of it that you don't want to deal with. Now, let's not kid ourselves. The owner of the New England Patriots, Robert Kraft, he's no saint either. I can remind everybody of the massage he was getting before the AFC Championship years ago. This sort of relationship being a 50-year difference between two people, they could probably care less about it behind closed doors, but it's in front and in public as the face of your franchise. And every time Bill Belichick steps up to a podium, not only are you going to get the cutoff sleeves and the holes in his shirt, but you're also going to get the questions about Jordan Hudson and him storming off every couple of minutes, and also some random press release clearly written by Jordan Hudson. And you're like, what is going on? No NFL franchise is going to be cool with that because, oh, we got Bill Belichick. And oh, by the way, there's still Steve Belichick that you're probably dragging along as well and all this other stuff.
Unless he was really told that he is going to be the next head coach when Bill leaves. And that was nepotism to
potentially
get him. That's the problem.
Potentially. And yeah, I just don't think now his stock is not, I don't think he's in a situation where anybody from the NFL is like, oh God, we got to have this. This is a disaster from a PR standpoint.
It's a disaster in general simply because I don't think that Bill Belichick wanted to be a college football coach. I don't think that he wanted to do much of the overall parts of being a football coach in college. I don't think that he wanted to deal with the daily nonsense of recruiting and NIL and kissing hands and shaking babies, or shaking hands and kissing babies like that.
Don't shake your babies.
It's been a long night for me, so I'm kind of delirious. But still, I'm not as delirious as believing that Jordan Hudson needs to have an entire role with my organization because of. I'm just going to ask the quiet part out loud. Jordan, what's your background in football? What is your background in football? What is your background in PR? What is your background in these other areas to help with Bill, other than being a part of Bill's will? Which, by the way, if you switch out B and W, that's the end goal for you at the finish line, in my opinion. That's what it is. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it is a fact. I remember when Urban Meyer went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and on that night when he stepped foot at TII Bank Stadium, I said this will be the most disastrous hire in NFL history. I said the exact same thing about Bill Belichick when he stepped foot in Chapel Hill. It will be the most disastrous hire in Chapel Hill history and potentially in college football history. And even if you end up going 9-3 this year, is the PR nightmare that you're dealing with right now worth all of the shenanigans that currently could be set up? Or worse, you end up having a terrible season and you still have to deal with the shenanigans, which is also a legit possibility.
Sounds like Jordan's qualified to be on the playoff committee.
Absolutely.
After hearing you guys talk on all this stuff. It sounds like she'd make a real good fit there. Hey, just really quickly before we go on to Sharon Moore, we got a super chat at the very end of last week's show. And I don't know, listen, we were talking Big 12, so I don't know if this listener, but I will clip this up and put it out as a TCU thing. The Urban Christian Institute with MJ Jackson said, TCU gets no respect. They return a bunch of production and were able to augment their team by adding quality pieces of the portal. Also, year 2 for Avalos and year 3 for Bryles with Hoover running the show. Cole, do you have quick thoughts on TCU? And did we not give them, I don't think we gave them any love last week. Did we gloss over, or are there just too many other teams that are ahead of them?
I will give a little bit of praise here. Josh Hoover, in my opinion, is the third best quarterback in the Big 12 this year. I think far and away Sam Levitt and Sawyer Robertson are a little bit ahead of him, but then I would go with Josh Hoover. Over 4,000 passing yards, really good overall consistency when it came to fitting in Kendall Bryles' system. I just have 2 questions. Are you going to be good at the wide receiver position with Jack Beck and Savion Williams going off to the NFL? And is your schedule going to allow you to put yourself in a position where you're going to be in that dark horse range to go to Arlington and win a Big 12 title? I truly think as of right now, the Big 12 is probably a one-team conference for the college football playoff unless something miraculous happens where both teams end up going 11-1. And I'm just not ready to put TCU in that conversation. I like what Texas Tech has done on paper more. I like what Baylor has at the quarterback more. I like what Kansas State has roster-wise more. And I like Arizona State returning the most production in college football this year. But I don't think that it's a shock that TCU is going to be in that 8-4, 9-3 range. It's just not good enough to go to the college football playoff.
Appreciate the super chat. If we do try and hit some comments here and there, but if you have a comment, you certainly are welcome to put it there. If you're watching on Twitter, we've done pretty well over there. I have continued to upload the pod to X, Twitter, whatever. If you could go subscribe on YouTube, we certainly would appreciate it. Let's go up to Ann Arbor. And listen, guys, I want to let you know I am subbing out of segment number 4 today. I just really didn't want to talk about it. I showed up for segments 1 through 3, but I don't want to talk for segment 4. So you guys will just have to carry it. Tom, tell me about Jerome Moore.
Yeah, what's going on, buddy?
And thoughts on this.
Yeah, so there was a report earlier on this week that Michigan is expected to suspend Coach Sharon Moore 2 games during the 2025 season as a self-imposed punishment in the advanced scouting case, industry sources telling Dan Wetzel and Pete Thamel of ESPN.com. So the part of this that's interesting is that they were selective of the weeks that they are going to self-impose this suspension. It's weeks 3 and 4, which are versus Central Michigan at home and at Nebraska. That will be the Big Ten opener for Michigan on the road. So it's like, okay. But they open the season at home against New Mexico, and then they're at Oklahoma. So it's just kind of like odd. It'd be like, you're picking those 2 games. Like, why not just the first 2 games? Hell, if you really wanted to slap yourself on the wrist, you'd suspend yourself for Ohio State at the end of the year. But we knew that wasn't going to happen.
It wasn't going to happen.
Here's the thing that I love. Chimdi Chekwa, former Ohio State Buckeye, host of the Believe in Buckeyes podcast. I've had him on my show in the past. He's wonderful. He put this out on X. He said, quote, "We really went from it's all lies to it's legal to everybody does it to there won't be any punishment, so it doesn't matter, to I'll suspend myself for 2 games of my choosing for what I did. What's next?" Chimdi hit the nail on the head with that. I completely agree. This is so like far removed from the whole Connor Stallions debacle, sign stealing, all that sort of stuff, that it almost feels like, are we still talking about this? Because the business of college football is not going to give Michigan the death penalty or suspend them from postseason play or suspend them for a year. If you take away the wins, does it really matter? If you say they didn't win the national title, they'll just all say, well, we won the game, so it doesn't matter. Like, this has been so bungled. I don't understand the reason for this suspension, and then also being so selective of the 2 games that Sharon Moore is going to sit out and, self-imposed. What a big deal this is going to be. Michigan, yeah, like on the road at Nebraska, we really don't know what Michigan's going to be this year, so that could be, competitive, but we just don't know. Here's the real truth, I think, about Sharon Moore, is he's still the head coach at Michigan by the time Bryce Underwood is done in Ann Arbor. And does Bryce Underwood spend his entire time in Ann Arbor as a Michigan Wolverine in the college ranks, that is? So I just don't know how much longer Sharon Moore can keep up this, we're the victims, and what happened a few years ago was, it was Harbaugh and it was Stallions and he was just kind of exempt from this. And if this is his way of paying his penance, it's a really weird penance to me.
It's weird because I also understand why you want to be in the Oklahoma game. He played at Oklahoma. It's his alma mater. He wants an opportunity to beat them. I get it, but we got to have better rules than just self-imposing bans. We have to have, I think, the Big Ten or just the NCAA lay down the law on what are the games you are going to be suspended for. Because it should end up being, if it is New Mexico and Central Michigan, it's New Mexico and Central Michigan. If it's Nebraska and it's Oklahoma, because those are bigger games and because of the fact that you had the self-imposed ban, or that now you're saying that, well, we didn't do anything. Well, maybe we did do something. Okay, well, we did do something, but you know what? We're going to handle it internally. They should have a say because it's against the rules. It's against the overall standing, and you got caught doing it. So regardless of how it is, I don't have a problem with the self-imposing ban. I don't even have a problem with him missing the Michigan game. I mean, with the Oklahoma game. But why the Oklahoma? But why the Nebraska game? Like, also, here's my opinion on this.
He should have done 1 and 3. That's what he should have done. Hey, I'm going to miss the opener, and then I'm going to miss Central Michigan, but I'm there for Oklahoma and Nebraska. Like,
let me ask you: is it kind of
what's NCAA going to do?
Is
that really a punishment if you miss the 2 easiest games on your schedule?
Is it a slap in the face, though, to Nebraska saying, oh, yeah, our head coach is going to be out. Matt Rule, congratulations. This isn't going to be a win for you either. Like, is that what it is? I kind of disagree with Tom. I think that in one stance, Sharon Moore is not worried about his job. If the new school president, because, of course, San Antonio is now going down to Florida, if he still believes in what is the future underneath Sharon Moore. And if the boosters still believe that Bryce Underwood is worth every single penny and he's not asking for more money in NIL and he doesn't leave and they're able to have sustainable success, which is 9-3, 10-2, be in that college football playoff hunt, I don't think that he's out of a job. I also don't know if he was the right hire to begin with, but I understand why you made that hire. Because if you wanted to keep continuity with the rest of the roster after winning a national championship, knowing that Jim Harbaugh was gone, and this was his right-hand man waiting in the wings to hopefully eventually get that opportunity to coach elsewhere. And sometimes it ends up working. Marcus Freeman was a name that I think a lot of people were underwhelmed at the hire at the national perspective because if he's never been a head coach before and you're taking over at Notre Dame and he's been to a national championship faster than Brian Kelly did and he's been to the same number of national championships that Brian Kelly went to when he was at Notre Dame. So maybe that could be the case for Sharon Moore. But at this point, can we all agree that Michigan got caught cheating? What they did was illegal. You're openly going out of your way to say we're going to have self-imposing bans because if we know we messed up, but it also doesn't matter because of at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Take away the national championship that they won and they're still going to claim? That's the dumb part when people scream all the time, oh, well, Michigan doesn't deserve the national championship. Tell that to their fans. They're never going to take that away. I'm a Houston Astros fan. 2017, we cheated. Bang, bang. Everyone knows it. Guess what? Everybody in Houston still claims the 2017 World Series champion Houston Astros is one of the best teams in baseball. They're still going to do the exact same thing out in Ann Arbor. So you can take away the title. You can strip them for quote-unquote the trophy. You can go ahead and say they cheated. It was against the rules. It's not going to matter. Sharon Moore's going to have a 2-game suspension. I probably would suspend him for 2 bigger games than Nebraska and Central Michigan, but that's just my 2 cents. Do what you gotta do behind closed doors and get ready for regular season.
I have such conflicting thoughts here. I think it's hilarious that he picked, the 2 games that he wanted, right? And had Central Michigan and Nebraska been weeks 1 and weeks 2, I don't think anybody would balk at that, right? I almost remember, and I might just be making this up 100%, which as an FSU fan, you just have to make stuff up. But I almost remember Saban or Smart suspending a guy for week 2 when they had a big game. They had an internal thing and they ended up suspending a guy for week 2 because they had a big game week 1. Maybe I'm completely making that up, but I feel like this has kind of happened, but it was 7-8 years ago. This isn't something recent. I think that is objectively hilarious. Again, if Central Michigan and Nebraska were weeks 1 and week 2, I don't think it'd be a big deal. I think we would just say oh, they got lucky that Oklahoma was week 3. We'd be talking, well, should this be a 3-game ban or whatever? So I think that part's hilarious. I also think it's hilarious that Michigan is doing anything here because I do think we are getting so very close to the time where the NCAA is virtually irrelevant in college football. And I understand that the cheating allegations are very different than NIL stuff, but they're not even allowed to enforce NIL rules right now. They're not even allowed to enforce inducement rules right now. Tennessee and Virginia suing the NCAA, that hasn't lifted. And so I almost wonder why is Michigan still, why are they doing this at all? Right? Why pick weeks 3 and 4? I would literally just say, no, we're going to ignore that. And if the Big Ten comes down on you, I think that's probably a little bit stronger. But if I'm Michigan, I'm not doing anything because I don't think the NCAA runs our sport in 3-4 years. I think that we are moving towards a new governing body. And so that's probably what has me the most confused. If I'm Michigan, I'm not self-imposing anything, and I'm not listening to any rules that the NCAA comes down with either. Now, if the Big Ten steps in the middle of that and says hey, they suspended you for 2 games, you got to sit out, then I'm probably rolling with it. But I don't know. The NCAA doesn't even run our postseason. And so who cares that you said I was suspended? I'm going to show up. I'm going to be there Saturday. I'm going to coach the team. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad take. I don't know. But I think I would just ignore it. I don't think I would have imposed anything. And I think I'd have gone, like what Cole was saying earlier, double middle fingers up. I ain't effing leaving by DiCaprio.
Here's a fun one for you. Why are you now having a self-imposed ban on an away game? Shouldn't you, with the home field environment, have a home matchup to where you're banned? And don't tell me that Central Michigan is the home matchup. Spare me.
Maybe he's going to be on Central Michigan's sideline for that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Really take it full circle.
Is Connor Stallion's twin brother going to be there with you? Is he going to be holding your hand and guiding you through the Chippewas? Do the Washington game. That's a game to where, hey, these are 2 evenly matched teams. You have the home atmosphere on your side. Jed Fish has a quarterback that might be better than what Bryce Underwood is right now with Damon Williams. We're going to take away the advantage of you having your head coach for this matchup. Chip Lindsey, Get ready to show why you're the right guy for the job. You're not, but guess what? We're going to figure out why you're the right guy for the job. Do that rather than having missed the Nebraska game. Because all you're doing is you're saying, oh, well, if we lose to Nebraska, we didn't have our head coach and it was a road environment and a hostile atmosphere. You should be punished in ways, if you are going to be punished, which I agree with TJ. Hey, the NCAA, are you really going to care about this? Nope. Okay, cool. I'm going to stay on the sidelines. You can't tell me to do it otherwise. But if you're really going to care about this, do it for a game that's in your own backyard. Do it for one that is going to have ramifications with an evenly matched team. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Are we really going to continue to sell ourselves? Like, selling ourselves that this is the year that Nebraska finally puts it all together is like selling ourselves Texas A&M is finally going to be an 11-1 team. Can we stop until we see it? Let's not put the wagon before the horse. And I like Dylan Raiola and Matt Rule too. But like, let's put a pause on that kind of shenanigans because I've heard it so many times before. I'm going to continue to hear it. I'm tired of hearing it.
Cole, I'm going to let you keep it here as we move on to how about Saban meeting with the president to try and figure out this NIL mess. Saban, obviously the GOAT of the sport, but certainly the GOAT in that conference that you represent.
That I represent here.
Yeah,
I think it's really interesting because I think that Saban understood well before anybody else that NIL was going to be a massive problem in the world of college football because there's no boundaries. Like, there literally are no boundaries. There's no boundaries when it comes to the transfer portal. There's no boundaries on what is actually going to be written in stone. There's no boundaries on what is the actual asking price for a player. And everything is just kind of in a hypothetical situation. And we talked about this before, TJ. I think Tom was out last week. I think we talked about this last week when Tom was out. We're believing that players are getting promised all of this accolades and sums of money when we don't know for a fact that it's even written in stone. Like, you're trusting the word of somebody is going to pay you, that Jim Bob from JBM's Motor Mechanics is going to give you that $2.5 million, and then he writes you a check for $250 and says, oh, your word against mine, because it's not written in stone. So I think what Saban's trying to do, and what the president's trying to do, which we're going to talk about this from a sporting standpoint, not a political standpoint, is make sure that everything is regulated properly. If you are promising sums of money, if you have a certain set point in NIL funds, you're going to hold up your end of the bargain. And what it's also going to do is it's going to lead to, I think, different changes when it comes to the transfer portal and rules surrounding what comes in the portal. We're eventually going to get to a level of these are contracts. Much like in any other contract, if your contract is terminated, you're given a quick buyout, you're given your last bit of your paycheck, and then you move on to your next job. But if you're not going into a buyout and you don't leave the company, you are locked into that contract, which is going to relegate the transfer portal, which is going to relegate the number of transfers you have, which is going to allow you to have, I think, more roster construction to where when we're going into the month of April and we have the start of spring games, you're not wondering, should I play this kid on my spring game, knowing that the film that he is going to get will be utilized against me for another opponent in the SEC or another opponent in the Big Ten, because I've already been told that he's entering the transfer portal. Saban was really smart when he said, when he retired, that this is going to be a big reason why a lot of coaches get out of the game. And it was a big reason why he got out of the game. I mean, there were so many rumors that came out about what conversations were like in the exit interviews after losing to Michigan 24 hours later. And it wasn't about the future of Alabama football. It was about, hey, my future at Alabama requires X amount of dollars for me to stay here or watch me go to the highest bidder. And that's a problem. And that's always going to be a problem. So I think that the plan is knowing that, again, whether or not, however you feel about the president, comes from a business background, everything that is going to be made is made in business standpoint to allow players to get relegated the right contracts and also for roster construction to stay at a stable point.
Tom, anything on this one? I'll say quickly and then I'll pass to Tom. Sorry, I led you in. And then I just think it's insane that, just again, not getting so political with it, but just the fact that this mess is having to go up to, like, if I had told you 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that like we would be meeting at that point, we didn't even know who the president would be, right? In 2025. But if I had told you that Nick Saban would have quit his job to meet with the president to try and fix college football, like, imagine that statement 15 years ago. Like, that's absurd. Just the place that we're in. And I don't really have some grand takeaway or, oh, here's what's going to get fixed or here's what's going to happen. But just the state that our sport is in is really I mean, it's hilarious and depressing at the same time, right? Like it's like a hilarious mess that you're kind of watching unfold. The fact that, the GOAT of the sport has to meet with a president, a controversial president, to try and fix the sport is, I mean, hilariously awful. And that's really just my only take on it. And obviously, as a fan who obsesses over this stuff way too much, hopefully it does get fixed. Hopefully we do start to trend back to some sense of normalcy. But yeah, I mean, Cole kind of hit everything on the head there that I would take away from it. That's just kind of my observation, I suppose.
I just don't see anything changing right now because we've heard this for years. When is it actually going to be done? When are we actually going to have more regulation? When are we actually going to have rules and stipulations added into the portal? It's like, again, saying that Nebraska and Texas A&M are going to be back this year. This is where it all comes together. We've heard it for so long and we haven't seen it. So now because of one guy who, yes, major standpoint in the world of college football, if not the biggest voice in college football, has a meeting with the controversial president, this is what's going to change our sport. Let me see it in actual writing. Yeah. Just like I want to see every single contract in actual writing for NIL.
Yeah. I'm in favor of what Cole was saying in terms of you have to have contracts for this at some point. Like if you're in love with a 5-star, here's a 4-year deal. You don't leave, you don't transfer, you don't go early. Like you're going to be here the entire time. If you're not in love, hey, here's a 3-year deal with a 4th-year option. If it's a guy who's a 2-star, 3-star, it's like, here's a 1-year deal. See if you make the team. If you want to bounce, cool, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe we can add extensions beyond that. One of my fears of this, and I know no one really cares about this, is that are we going to get to a point where the student athlete thing is abandoned? And I'm okay with that label going away because it is BS at this point. I think we all understand like the student athlete thing is such a outdated, archaic idea that was created by the NCAA. My fear is that we're going to get to a point where these players are not students and that they just work for the university. So is it now affecting generations of people that it's like, hey, you're going to play major college football, whatever sport it is at the Division I level, and you're not going to get an education. You're going to get paid to be an employee of, name a school, play a sport, and you can play here for 4 years and then you're out. So I think that's something that unfortunately I could really see happening. And, I know I'm a homer and a Penn Stater, but James Franklin uses the phrasing of not transactional, but transformational. And I think that's the element that fans are upset about, is because this does feel like a business. This does feel like a transaction, and it's not this transformational, process anymore where kids go to a school, go to a community, meet people, make experiences, make relationships that last them the rest of their lives, and hopefully gain some sort of education, whether it's on or off the field, in a classroom, or just in life. And I fear that's going to go away just because they just want to pay you to play ball.
Yeah, I think that's a very realistic worry. I think that, I don't know that it's next year or within the next 2 years or anything like that, but I do think that essentially, it wouldn't shock me if it was 5 years away, so I think that's a very valid concern. All right, let's talk about, speaking of the transfer portal, maybe I think I let Tom have the first two, so I'll let Cole go first here on this one, take back to back, and then we'll get to the wild card. Top transfer portal transfers. I could try to think of another word that would work, and it wouldn't. But top transfer portal moves here in the spring window. We have talked about some of these. Ott going to Oklahoma, I think, is big. We talked about that a little bit. But let's talk about this a little bit, Cole. We can start with the SEC and talk about some guys.
Joey Aguilar is going to be number one because I think Tennessee is still built to be at least a player for the college football playoff. I'm not saying that they're going to go, and I don't know if I would have had them in the college football playoff with Nico Iamaleava, but you need to have consistent quarterback play, and you need your quarterback to be really well adapted to Josh Heupel's offense to take that next step forward if you're still going to be in that range. Your defense took a massive step back, in my opinion. You are going to lose some pieces. It doesn't mean it can't be good because you brought in Colton Hood from Colorado, which is going to do wonders, I think, for your secondary with Boot Carter and Jamad McCoy. But you're still going to be not having that same pass rush. It's not going to be as deep. And your wide receiver play has got to step on up. The same thing with your offensive line. So if Aguilar can be as advertised and just be a facilitator, I think that Tennessee can still be in that 10-win range. I think that Minard Watson, the transfer from Syracuse, may end up having a pretty big role for Texas. He was a 4-star coming out of high school. Really overall, I think quality defensive tackle. And that's been a weak point for Texas when it comes to recruiting the last 2 years. They've really relied heavily on veteranship, whether it was Byron Murphy and Devondre Sweat. And then you throw in, why am I playing? Baron Sorrell last year and Alfred Collins and all these players. You don't really have that next guy waiting in the wings. And I think that Manal Watson, who's a young player, showed promise last season, can be that guy from the get-go. You talked about Jaden Ott. I just look at that offensive personnel in general and say, he's a perfect fit for what you want to run in Ben Arbuckle's system. And it's going to take so much pressure off of John Mateer to have to play hero ball. And you're going to have a stable run game if he is healthy. That's a clue word, if he is healthy. But if he can stay healthy, there's an opportunity for him to lead the SEC in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, total touchdowns. He's a great pass catcher out of the backfield. It's what you want in terms of an ideal system that is going to elevate your offense. I think Ella Mosier, the outside linebacker coming on in from Army. I know I butchered that name. Ella Madozi. That's how I think he said it. I probably butchered that too, regardless. The way I view him is he is going to be the Trey Moore of Georgia's defense. Now, Trey Moore came on in from UTSA last year for Texas, and he had one job. Get to the quarterback, win your one-on-ones, put pressure in the backfield, go until you hear the whistle. That's what you need. One of the few weak points of Georgia that wasn't talked about enough last year was their front seven wasn't as physically imposing in years as it has been in years past. And you lose Michael Williams to the NFL draft. You lose several players to the transfer portal. You needed that enforcer. I think Mosier could be that guy. And then I've talked about Jack Endries. I think he is a phenomenal tight end. For my money, he may be the second or third best tight end in college football. And he's coming into Texas. And what do we know about Steve Sarkisian's offense? They love the tight end role. Jatavian Sanders had a great season in 2023. You talk about what you saw last season from Gunnar Helm as that big-time breakout player. You didn't have that right now. You have some young guys on the rise who could end up being really overall solid contributors, but you need an enforcer for Arch Manning. Rule number one for me, when you are a young quarterback, if you want to progress, have a stable tight end. Jack Andrews can be that guy as a receiving threat. He has some issues when it comes to blocking, but I really like his overall upside.
Tom, we'll throw it to the Big Ten for a little bit.
Yeah, I think Ohio State has had a really good transfer portal haul between the winter and the spring. Two that I want to point towards: C.J. Donaldson coming from West Virginia, filling in now at running back, and that Sam Williams Dixon Williams. I forget what the hyphen is for his last name, but it could be somebody that is the next running back in line. But you lose Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins to the NFL draft, so it was kind of a big question mark for Ohio State going into the offseason. I was like, who's going to be the number one tailback? C.J. Donaldson was a thumper last year at West Virginia and has been very consistent. I think for him to take the load off of potential starter Julian Sayin at quarterback in his first year as a starter in college football, I think that is going to be huge for them in general. You guys know this, and I've talked about it on the show before. I am a big fan of Max Clare, the tight end transferring from Purdue to Ohio State within the Big Ten. And for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned, first-year starter, you know what you have in Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, who's going to be that third receiving option. I really think it's going to be Max Clare. And for a young quarterback, often your best friends are strong running game and a very good pass-catching tight end. I think Max Clare is going to provide that as well. Outside of the Big Ten, not a lot of love for Carson Beck. Now, I'm not saying that he had a stellar 2024 and he is coming off of surgery on his throwing arm, but still what he could be for Miami. Mario Cristobal's done well recruiting and they've gotten some more weapons out of the transfer portal. Could that get Miami over the hump? Could they win the ACC? I think they'll at least fight for it. They'll fight for it with Clemson. I still like Clemson more than I like Miami, but they could have that chance to make the college football playoff as an at-large. So I think Carson Beck's going to be important, at least has the potential to be a big impact. And I agree entirely with Joey Aguilar to Tennessee. And it's funny because of the quote-unquote trade that happened between Tennessee and UCLA of Aguilar and Iamaleava. It's a bigger opportunity for Aguilar to have success now because it is Tennessee, Josh Heupel, the SEC. It's going to be more high profile. Nico, his big impact is going to be individual. And with UCLA, it's going to be, oh, well, they could make a bowl game now because that team around him is not good enough to all of a sudden bow up and win the Big Ten or make the college football playoff. That's not going to happen. But still, that would be a big impact for them because with Aguilar, it was like, hey, UCLA is going to be teetering on the edge of making a bowl game. Now you're looking at UCLA as like, hey, you guys could be a player within the Big Ten, not this year, but in the next few years, depending on how long Nico stays. So, big impact. I think that's going to be lesser. I think the story about Nico is going to kind of fade to the background because no one in Los Angeles really cares about football. So there's that element. But yeah, those ones I like. And then the point that Cole was making about Oklahoma, the tandem of Mateer and Ott, I am super excited about. Like that's the one thing. Even if Oklahoma isn't stellar this season and they don't make the playoff, you know they're going to be fun to watch with those two. I really like getting Jaden Ott out of the transfer portal.
What's so interesting to me is that we talk about Oklahoma. Oh, if they don't go 9-3 or they don't go 10-2, they're going to have a down year. If you look at their schedule, especially from Red River Shootout on, it is far and away the toughest schedule in college football. An 8-4 season for them, for most teams, would be 10-2. So you have to take that into context on what they could end up being. The same way that we had to last year about Florida. Because Florida, I don't think that they were deserving of being in that conversation of, oh, well, we got to 8-5. They should be the biggest rising star in the sport. But you got to admit that their schedule was a murderer's row, especially with the way that Miami finished, the way that Texas A&M had a 7-1 start, the way that Texas made the college football playoff. There was a lot of things that went in their favor that eventually helped them kind of get over the hump. They played 3 college football playoff teams. 2 more names I really want to mention that we didn't. Keelan Marion comes on in from BYU to Miami. I think that's going to do wonders in the slot and on special teams. Again, you know what Shannon Dawson's offense is, the way that it can be a vertical approach. I think that he can be an all-caliber punt returner and an All-American in that stance. It's a big-time get for Carson Beck with that speed. And a guy that we didn't bring up that I'm shocked that Tom didn't mention, Trevor Pena. I mean, you look at Deontay Ross, you look at Kyron Hudson, you had to bring in, I think, that slot receiver role. Now, regardless of what the conversation was in NIL funds, I think that that's a good fit for what you want to run with Drew Aller to give you that final piece that's over the hump. So I really do like the take. And then Bo Atkinson leaving North Carolina to go into Ohio State. You lose Jack Sawyer, you lose JT Tuimoloau. He may end up being just a third down pass rusher, but hell, if you have a third down pass rusher that can get you 8.5 sacks and 10 tackles for losses, I'll take that 10 times and twice on Sundays.
On Miami specifically, I saw an interesting tweet, I think from Zenith's. In the last 11 days, they've picked up 7 guys, 2 experienced defensive backs. I'm not super high on either side. The Marion that you mentioned, the All-American kick returner, one of the best running backs out of the FCS level, a starting linebacker from North Carolina State, Bern Arbern from Texas. Which
why they get Texas kicker? Yeah. I mean, come on, Zenith. Why they get Texas kicker? Why did he leave Texas? Huh?
Yeah, not super high on that. Cincinnati's leader in touchdown catches last year. It's a little interesting to me. I think Miami certainly plays the game of, and I want to get you guys to take quickly, and then we'll get on the wild card. It's a little interesting to me that you take that much right now coming off of a 10-win season. I know they lost some talent to the NFL. They didn't just get absolutely ravished by the NFL or anything like that. It's a little interesting to me that, it feels a little desperate to add pieces as late as you can. Now, maybe they hit on 6 of these 7 guys and their desperation worked out well. But it almost signals to me, it almost signals we don't love where we're at right now, and maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm completely off and I'm just being an FSU hater. As somebody who Florida State is desperate in the transfer portal right now. Won 2 games last year. But I do think there's differing levels of, Miami's coming off a 10-win season, Florida State coming off a 2-win season. I think their portal haul here is interesting. I think the timing of it is interesting. And they've absolutely loaded up. Now, how good that loading up is going to be is up for debate, I guess. We'll find out when they play Notre Dame in Florida in the first month of the season and then go to Tallahassee right after that. But their portal haul certainly strikes me, and they are. Mario's done a good job of recruiting. They've not been bad there, but it seems like there's a lot of going and grabbing from the portal for sure that's happening, and I think that's interesting from them.
And special notice for Gio Lopez that I mentioned earlier on by Cole to UNC. I really like Gio Lopez. Even if UNC is a dumpster fire, I expect him to stand out.
I don't think that they hate their roster, and I do think that you're partially just a hater, TJ, just being completely honest. But I do think that there were
I
some.
didn't say the word hate. I didn't say the word hate. Don't like where they're at in some areas. I think is how
You're a Miami hater.
I do hate them. I didn't say
you are a
hate.
Miami hater. I think that
Yes,
you're looking at this with this garnet and gold color glasses that is allowing you not to see the entire roster. But you and I talked about this last week. I am not buying right now into Miami being a favorite to go to the college football playoff, to win the ACC. I think them and Georgia Tech are right in that same range. I think that Louisville and them are right in that same range. I think that maybe with the additions that they brought in, I love Keelan Marion. I do believe he is going to be a difference maker for this offense. It's a really good move. But is that a move that's going to take you over the top to a 10-2, 11-1 record? I don't think so. And if I don't think that you're going to be in that range, I don't think that you're going to the college football playoff. And it's still an underwhelming season, I think, for Miami because of you're in the ACC and you're Miami. Start acting like it.
Let's go to the wild card. Wrap this thing up and take us home, Tom.
Piggybacking off of our conversation earlier about the president meeting with Nick Saban to talk about the future of college football, NIL, some sort of governance, some sort of governing body that actually does something as opposed to the NCAA. I want to give both TJ and Cole the opportunity to pick two individuals, one to be the future commissioner of college football and the other to be the future head of the College Football Players Association, assuming that a union ever comes to fruition. Nick Saban, while everyone respects him, understands who he is as a tactician, as a coach, as a leader of men, now as a broadcaster, all those sorts of things, does that necessarily mean that he would be great in an executive role? I have no idea. I don't know Nick Saban personally well enough to decide on that. But I'm curious who you two think could be another viable candidate to be the commissioner of college football and someone to represent the college football players, very similar to the NFL model. So who would like to go first?
So are we taking Saban off? Like, so we're saying you can't pick Saban because
let's say Saban's out. I think like Saban, ironically, like the president, is like big shiny object. I'll vote for him, that sort of thing. But does that necessarily make him the best candidate? So I'm giving you guys the opportunity. Who are some people that you think could be good candidates?
Are we also taking out Jordan Hudson?
Damn it. That was my pick.
You have to take it seriously. All
right. You want it first, Cole? I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Or we can sneak it back and forth.
I'll let you go first because I want to see which person I'm going to go with on each. Because I have one, but I want to let you go first.
All right. Well, I don't have one. So I'm going to kill time and talk nonsense for just a minute while I think and rattle things through my mind. As far as a player, so I'm trying to think through like some former players. You know, I don't know if he'd be up for this, but this is who I'm nominating. The player representative, I think I might go Peyton Manning. I think Peyton and his family, what they stand for, he's done it at the highest of levels. But also when you look at the way that their family just operates, the fact that Arch is going to spend another year in college, like I just think that he comes at it from a very good perspective. And I think that it seems like a guy who truly does care about not just football, but cares about people in general. He's personable enough, like you've seen him on the Manning casts. I think he'd be a really good one for the player personnel. As somebody who was elite in college, elite in the NFL, I think he'd be really good. Good head on his shoulders, good family lineage, kind of background. And then, kind of, I know maybe people wouldn't think about him from a college football standpoint anymore. But because Arch is kind of resurfaced as a name, I think Peyton would be a good one. Give me your player one so I can think on a commissioner, Cole.
I can do both because I have it back and forth. Peyton was one of my answers, but I want to go a little bit different.
No way.
I think that because of the way that he fought the NCAA to gain back his Heisman Trophy and what he has meant to the game of college football, Reggie Bush needs to be in that conversation. Reggie Bush to me is, when I think of my love for college football and how it started, it began with number 5 and what he meant to this sport and what his overall legacy has been to the sport of college football. And I think that he understands the regulations about what players go through. And I think that he also understands, hey, this is unjust by the NCAA to punish a player for something that really had nothing to do with them when there were no rules. And also what was legal 2 years ago is now illegal, or what was illegal 5 years ago is now legal. So I'm somebody that's been through that. I'm somebody that has rightfully fought for my overall status to be known as one of the greatest in college football, to have my name attached to those legends in Atlanta, to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. I think that Reggie Bush is a name that does not get enough respect, I think, in the grand scheme of things. And for him to be a major role model for future players in this sport, for a lot of people that grew up falling in love with Reggie Bush the way that I fell in love with college football because of Reggie Bush, would do wonders. And then a name for college football commissioner that, again, another person that does not get enough respect. And I wonder why he is not actually more renowned for his opinions on the sport. But I go Chris Peterson. I think that Chris Peterson has been such a overall godsend to this sport to show what the levels of success are like. And it's not just in terms of being an underdog that got the upset in the Fiesta Bowl with Boise State. It's showing that you can recruit at a fine level. It's showing what are the regulations that you need to build a program. It's the sustainability that he was able to create at Boise State and then translate that from the G5 level to the Power 4 level by going on over to Washington. And I think that he thinks the way that Nick Saban thinks in a lot of overall personas for what's best in college football, what is necessary for college football. And I think that he truly cares about college football. This is somebody that when you hear him talk on Fox, he is not just fabricating or being bombarduous or being an overall boastful person. He's somebody that actually is looking out for the best interest of the sport. And I personally think that if he was ever offered an opportunity to change the sport, he would have it in the right set of mind for it to be a fair, competitive overall balance for the long term. So Chris Peterson would be my pick.
If I could raise people from the dead, I would pick Mike Leach.
Yeah, but I can't. That's the problem.
But short of him, this is maybe not the sexiest pick, but I think it would probably be one of the more effective picks. I think when you're trying to balance this, you do want somebody with a kind of a business mindset that, what have you done? Like, I just said Peyton because I think he's a good guy and I think he relate with people well, but I don't know that he is qualified to truly do that or not. So I'll go a completely different direction and I'll go with Greg Sankey. I think that somebody that's in this role similar and has certainly done a good job with the SEC. I will say this about Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti. There is an aspect of being born on third base that is, like people like ACC fans like to give Jim Phillips a hard time when he took over a sinking ship. Brett Yormark is maybe a name that's interesting, but I'd probably lean somebody like Greg Sankey. I think he's done a good job with the SEC. Think that would be a pretty acceptable answer, and probably if they got to this point, somebody that would literally be considered. I think that's a pretty realistic one. Good track record of what he's done with the conference, bringing in Texas and Oklahoma. I think he understands where the sport is going, where it's been. So I'd probably go that direction for mine.
I don't think there's really a winner or a loser for this wild card. I think it's a really interesting discussion in general because, like we said, it's not necessarily the bright, shiny object like a Peyton Manning. That doesn't necessarily mean he would be great in terms of managing people, that sort of stuff. For me, some honorable mentions in terms of commissioner. Barry Alvarez, former head coach at Wisconsin, current athletic director there. Also somebody who's universally respected and actually has experience in terms of putting together schedules, dealing with coaches, dealing with athletes, all the things that come with that level of management, et cetera. In terms of player representatives, former Penn State offensive lineman John Urschel, who is wildly intelligent, is working in the world of academia, stepped away from the NFL early to preserve his body and his brain, and I think is somebody who would understand the fact that what you're doing in college is happening in a vacuum. And yes, you're trying to get to the NFL, but understanding what is best for the player. Former Florida State safety, Myron Rolle, incredibly intelligent human being. Now, also, I'm mentioning these people, but none of them have gone through the NIL era. So that's the real challenge of this is maybe in a couple of years, you're going to see a player that is either still in the NFL or is done in the NFL that has gone through all of it at a high level and understands how to deal with the new world of name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, all that sort of stuff. I could see Robert Griffin III being somebody who understands this, very outspoken on it. He's not everybody's cup of tea, but he was the face of college football at one point and was somebody who probably could have capitalized on NIL and the transfer portal in a big way and certainly believes in rights for the players. So I think there's a lot of interesting choices for this. I think it's going to be really hard to find a commissioner that works for everybody. I think Nick Saban people agree on because he's a legend, but all the points I just said, you just don't know if he would be cut out for the executive level of what this would require. I think it's really interesting.
TJ Pittinger, Cole Thompson, Tom Hannafin, another week of the Power 2. Hey, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. If you watch on X, make sure you go over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button, boys. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next week.